The void was silent. Inside the Sanctis Veil, silence was rare. Engines throbbed, machine spirits whispered through rattling pipes, crewmen muttered litanies beneath flickering lumen strips. But today, for the first time in over 100 days of warp travel, the ship felt quiet. I stood outside the astropathic choir chamber, waiting. My duty was simple: record the message, not interpret, not question, just record. Inside, Astropath Elymas sat on his stone seat, thin and blind. His sockets were sealed with gold caps, his skin waxy. He looked more like a corpse than a man, but he was alive. More than that, he was listening. A low chime echoed through the corridor. The chamber doors groaned open. I stepped in with my data slate. The air was thick with incense and ozone. The psychic shielding hummed faintly underfoot. The choir ring behind Elymas sat empty. Most of the junior astropaths were resting after last night's communion. Only Elymas remained. Transmission received. The servo skull beside him buzzed. Clearance Delta 7. Priority. Astra Telepathica. I tapped the slate. Ready. Elymas did not move, but his voice, smooth, empty, filled the room. By the light of the Astronomicon, I bear this message from Segmentum Command. To Sector Vigilus, reinforcement request acknowledged. Delay expected. All assets remain vigilant. Glory to the Emperor. I wrote it down word for word. Standard procedure. But something changed. Elymas paused. His jaw twitched. Then softly, "They are listening beneath the dream." I froze. That was not part of the message. He continued, voice hoarse now. "The stars blink, not with light, but with hunger. There is a door beneath our feet. It opens when we sleep." I looked to the servo skull. No alarm, no warning. It continued recording calmly, as if this was expected. "Elymas," I asked, "is this part of the message?" He fell silent. Then he screamed. Not a word, not a phrase, just a raw scream, long and full of fear. I dropped the data slate and ran forward. Elymas was convulsing, eyes wide despite the golden seals. Blood ran from his ears and nose. The servo skull flew back, buzzing warnings. Tech adepts rushed in behind me. One jabbed a sedative into Elymas's neck. Another began chanting machine litanies to calm the choir stone. The air shimmered for a moment, as if something unseen had blinked into existence just above Elymas's head. Then it was gone. Silence returned. Elymas slumped in his seat, unconscious. The Mechanicus Magos checked his vitals and nodded. Stable, for now. "What happened?" I whispered. The Magos' voice was flat. He received a transmission too large for the mind. That sometimes occurs. But what did he mean? What door? The Magos gave no answer. Another adept handed me back my data slate. Its recording log was corrupted, just static. As I turned to leave, I glanced back one last time. Elymas's lips were moving. No sound came out, but I could read them. He sees us. He sees you. I tried to sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Elymas, saw the blood, heard the scream. They told me he'd overreached, that sometimes a soul brushes too close to the warp and comes back with the echoes. But I've transcribed over 100 astropathic messages since I boarded the Sanctis Veil. I've seen seizures, nosebleeds, the occasional gibbering panic. Never this. In the dark of my chamber, I reviewed the slate again. The message that was recorded before the corruption took hold. For a split second, less than a heartbeat, the waveform flickered. An anomaly, a voice that didn't belong. I slowed it down, amplified. Just one word, faint but unmistakable. Jonas, my name. We were not meant to look at it, not with human eyes, not even through reinforced viewports, but some crew couldn't help themselves. They stared, drawn to the flickering lights like moths to a pyre. I watched one such crew member today, a junior tech adept, standing still in front of the viewport. His eyes were wide, lips moving without sound. When I stepped closer, he turned to me slowly and said, "There's something behind the stars." Then he walked away, silent. No one else seemed to notice. Later, I visited the chapel, not to pray. I didn't know if I still believed, but something inside me wanted silence, stillness. Inside, I found Confessor Maros kneeling before the icon of the Emperor. I waited. After a while, he spoke. "The choir is silent today." I didn't answer. "Astropath Elymas still breathes," he continued, "but he does not speak. His mind is adrift. The others, the junior voices, they've gone quiet too, like candles blown out." He turned to me. His eyes were tired. "Do you believe this is a test of faith?" "I don't know," I whispered, "but it feels wrong, like the ship is listening." He nodded once. "Then pray louder." Elymas hadn't moved. He sat still in the choir seat, breathing shallowly. Tech priests monitored his vitals. A sensor halo surrounded his head, blinking green. His brain was active, too active. The servo skull floated nearby, repeating data. Pulse, stable. Theta wave, irregularities rising. Warp pressure elevated. I stood beside him, notebook in hand, ordered by the choir master to observe and report. And then, without warning, Elymas whispered, "They're still speaking." Everyone turned to him. He hadn't moved for 14 hours. "Elymas," the choir master stepped forward. "What do you mean?" "The Emperor's light is flickering. They come through the gaps." His voice was like glass breaking underwater. I saw the Astronomicon blink. He turned his face away. Silence followed. The air turned colder. I checked the transmission logs. No message had been received. He was hearing nothing. Or worse, something no longer being sent. That night, a Vox Tech crew reported a disturbance. They had gone below deck to inspect a malfunctioning transmission node. Static had flooded the command channels. No origin, no warning. When they arrived, they found the Vox unit humming, not broken, active. It was broadcasting something. One of them recorded it on their private AUS recorder. I got a copy through a friend in engineering. I played it back in my cabin. The sound was faint, but after filtering the noise, I heard it. A whisper. "Do not listen, do not hear, do not look." Then a voice like Elymas's, saying something else. "There is a door beneath the ship. I don't sleep anymore. Every time I try, I hear that whisper again. I hear my name in the static. I hear Elymas breathing behind my walls. But it's impossible. He's locked down 3 decks away, surrounded by sanctioned psychics and sensor webs." And yet, last night I woke up to find a phrase scratched into the condensation on my mirror. "The Emperor is not watching." I stared at it for what felt like an hour. Then I wiped it away. I told myself I was dreaming. But I've stopped checking mirrors now. Ship Command ordered a full sweep of the astropathic systems. They found no breach. No signs of demonic incursion. The Geller fields remained intact. But Margos Drax gave a quiet report to senior staff. I was allowed to observe from the back. Warp signatures are increasing in density. Minor inconsistencies in real space integrity are being observed in low-deck junctions. The captain asked, "Is the ship compromised?" Drax hesitated. "Not yet, but the pressure is rising, as if something is pressing against the hull." "What does that mean?" someone whispered. Drax answered coldly, "It means we're being watched. The Emperor's light is what guides us. That's what we're told. It shines through the warp, through the choir, through men like Elymas. But what if that light dims? What if we are alone in the dark, and something else is speaking in his silence? I keep hearing that whisper in my head, over and over. There is a door beneath the ship. I don't know what it means, but I think we're getting closer. Too close. The machine was still working. No sparks, no damage, no loose wires, and yet the static wouldn't stop. For the third night in a row, Vox Relay 19 was filling the comm channels with soft, whispering interference. Not screaming, not noise, just something breathing in between frequencies, like a voice trying to form words, but always just out of reach. Technician Vaul had called me himself. He was pale when I arrived, sweating under his hood despite the cold. I swear on my station, he said. No one routed a transmission here. The machine is cold, but the signal keeps speaking. We stood in silence as the Vox hissed. Then we both heard it. Behind the steel, under the veins. We wait. I replayed the Vox recording in my cabin, slowed, filtered, enhanced through my data slate. Most of it was just noise, but 3 words were clear. Open the door. Again that phrase, again that voice that wasn't quite Elymas, but close enough to raise the hairs on my neck. And then the worst part. I paused the audio, and for just a moment, I thought I heard something continue after the pause. A whisper, too faint to catch, coming not from the slate, but from behind me. I turned around. No one. Just the sound of my own breath. The next day, Confessor Maros summoned me to the upper gallery. We watched the astropathic chamber from behind a reinforced screen. Elymas remained in his throne, unmoving, not speaking, yet somehow aware. A ring of sanctioned psychers had been placed around him in meditation. 4 had already collapsed this week, mentally drained or driven mad. The last one simply walked out, silent, and threw himself into an open lift shaft. He said something was calling him home, Maros said, voice tight. What does Elymas say? I asked. Maros hesitated. He says he is still receiving messages. From Terra? No. He turned to look at me. From us. From those already lost. The whispers were spreading faster than orders. Crewmen spoke of hearing names whispered in the air vents, the names of the dead. Some refused to sleep near bulkhead 8B, claiming they saw eyes behind the walls. The ship's navigator reported shadow glare in the Astronomicon light. One crewman swore his Auspex picked up a Vox ID code from a ship lost in M35. A vessel, never recovered, presumed destroyed centuries ago. They called it a Vox ghost. The idea chilled me. Sometimes old signals bounced through the warp like echoes. Sometimes lost transmissions returned, long after the senders were dead. But this was different. These weren't echoes, they were answers. I was summoned to an emergency briefing. The senior tech priest, Magos Drax, displayed several overlapping signal logs. At exactly 3:17 across 3 decks, all Vox units, including sealed backup lines, activated. Same signal, same whisper, same phrase. We remember. Let us in. Drax said nothing at first. His sensors flickered. His faceplate shifted slightly. I think even he was unnerved. These are not natural artifacts, he finally said. This is not machine failure. The warp is pushing back. Captain Elbar asked, can we cut them off? Number, these signals aren't coming through the Vox. He turned slowly. They're coming through us. That night, I sat alone, reading back through everything I'd written, all the recordings, all the whispers, Elymas's strange warnings, and I realized something. He had said, "The choir must not sing." I didn't understand it then, but now I wondered, what if something is waiting on the other side of the warp? What if every message we send, every call through the immaterium is not just heard, but answered? What if the moment we speak, we open the door? Alarms triggered just after midnight. I wasn't there, but I saw the security feed later. Elymas had stood up for the first time in days. He walked out of his throne seat, slowly, calmly, past 3 stunned guards and into the center of the choir chamber. The sanctioned psychers around him began to convulse. Some screamed, one bit off her own tongue. Another dropped dead, with his hands pressed to his ears. Elymas raised one hand and whispered, "I hear them now. I hear all of them." Then, with a voice loud enough to shake the walls, he shouted, "They are already inside." The feed ended in static. I can't sleep. I hear my name when I close my eyes, not in my head, not imagined, in the walls. My mirror cracked this morning, just a hairline split, but when I looked close, I saw something impossible reflected in the glass. For a moment, was Elymas. He smiled, but his mouth was not his own, and behind him there was no room, just stars, endless and empty. There were more officers than seats. Magos Drax, Confessor Maros, Navigator Rel, the ship's commissar, Captain Elbar, and me, Scribe Adept Jonas. I still don't know why I was there, except perhaps because I was the only one writing it all down. The captain spoke first. Elymas walked. He spoke. He nearly killed 5 sanctioned psychers without touching them. That is not natural. Commissar Vorlex leaned forward, gauntleted hands clasped. "It's heresy. Purge him before this spreads further." "No," said Navigator Rel sharply. "You kill our only remaining conduit, and we blind ourselves. The warp is boiling. If I lose anchor now, we die screaming." Drax added flatly, "Whatever Elymas is now, he may be the only thing keeping us from seeing what lies outside." Everyone fell quiet. I sought out Confessor Maros after the meeting. He was placing fresh wax seals across the chapel walls, muttering protective verses. His hands shook slightly, even as he worked. "They are no longer content to whisper," he said. "Now they knock." I asked him what he meant. He showed me one of the warding tablets used to sanctify the ship. It had cracked in half, not shattered, not dropped, split down the center as if by unseen pressure. "The scripture is clear," he whispered. "When the veil weakens, the spirits of the beyond test our walls. If the Emperor is silent, the dead will speak." "Dead?" I asked. He looked at me. "Not just ours." Tech adepts began reinforcing the astropathic choir chamber with additional protection, leaded walls, blessed circuitry, and psychic dampeners. They built what they called a containment halo. It wasn't working. The moment Elymas returned to the choir throne, the room buzzed, like a swarm of flies behind every wall. Candles guttered, steel groaned. He hadn't spoken since the last outburst, but he smiled now and then, as if listening to someone tell him a secret. I recorded everything. His pulse remained steady. Brain activity was erratic, too active, as if he were dreaming while awake. And once, just once, I saw a tear run down his cheek. That was what frightened me most, because it wasn't blood, it was black. I tried to sleep, but the Vox in my room clicked on by itself. No signal, just breathing. My breathing played back to me in real time. I unplugged the receiver. The sound continued. I placed the entire unit outside my door. The sound followed me inside. When I checked the logs, nothing had recorded, nothing at all. I fear the rites are failing. Each prayer I utter feels heavier. The incense burns with the scent of rot. Today, I attempted the rite of sanctified flame near the core junction. The flame died 3 times before taking. One of my acolytes saw her own face in the shrine mirror. Except, it smiled at her while she wept. I fear we are not merely haunted. We are being read, our thoughts, our sins, our hopes. Someone, something, is watching through our eyes. Commissar Vorlex convened a purge team. 10 guardsmen, flame units, chain blades, one sanctioned psyker, heavily sedated. He claimed it was a precautionary measure. I was told to deliver the authorization forms for their deployment. One of the soldiers, a veteran with augmetic eyes, asked me quietly, "Is it true? He sees us in dreams." I didn't answer, but his hands trembled when he checked his laser gun charge. Just past ship's midnight, alarms triggered again. This time, a hull echo. Something knocking from inside the ship, but no breach was found. The sound had come from Elymas's own throne. When security entered, he was awake, eyes sealed, lips smiling. He whispered, "You tried to seal the gate. It has no lock." One guard raised his weapon. Elymas turned toward him slowly. "You are hollow. He could wear you like a coat." The guard screamed and shot himself in the head. We reviewed the footage later. He had not even removed the safety. Every warning we placed, every seal, every prayer, every data lock fails, not by force, not by attack. They simply rot, fade, like old memory. I visited the ship archive today, looking for a record of similar events. There was nothing. Dozens of files, gone. Just empty directory spaces where logs should be. Drax says it's corruption, a machine error, but I think we're being erased, not just killed, unwritten. Elymas finally spoke, again, at 3:19. I was the only one in the observation chamber, watching through the shielded screen. He raised his head slowly, and in a voice that wasn't his, he said, "You are the message. You are the signal. And he is almost here." There should be nothing on the hull in the warp. That's what the void handlers say. It's what the machine priests chant. The Geller field is sacred. It keeps the monsters out. That's the truth we hold on to. But today, that truth cracked. An external inspection drone sent out for routine survey, Kolkin Salai, to check for microfractures in the plating, returned with visual feed, not corrosion, not battle damage, footprints burned into the outer hull, dozens, barefoot, each one pressed inward, as if something had walked along the void in perfect silence and tried to enter. I sat with Margos Drax and Captain Elbar as we watched the loop. The drone circled the dorsal section of the Sanctis Veil. At first, nothing, just glistening adamantium. Then, marks. Charred outlines, human-sized, pacing along the spine of the vessel, some overlapping, some forming circles. The feet were too perfect, no scuff marks, no wear. Each step was like a brand, as if the surface had been kissed by flame. No suit prints, no boots, just bare, burned flesh. Navigator Rel crossed himself. "That shouldn't be possible." "It isn't," Drax replied, "not unless the field let something in." So, Bridgevox logs confirm. At the exact moment the footprints appeared, the Geller field pulsed, just for 1 second. The pulse was small, almost nothing. But in that second, crew on deck 17 reported flickering lights, a power loss, and screams that came from nowhere. No one was missing, but one man was found curled in a corner, blindfolded and weeping. His skin was unburned, but his boots were smoking. He had removed them himself, whispering. They needed to know the path. I dreamt of the hull, of walking it barefoot through cold starlight and golden fog. Behind me were others, silent, faceless. Elymas stood ahead, his back to me. He pointed upward. I followed his gaze. The sky was not the warp. It was a great eye, weeping blood, blinking without lids. When it blinked, I screamed. I woke with blood on my pillow. From my ears, The hull sensors began malfunctioning. All readings showed normal, but every 6 hours the pattern reappeared. Burn marks, prints, pressure traces, always shifting locations, like someone pacing the ship from the outside. Drax sealed the logs under Magos-only clearance, but I saw them. He let me, and the last recording chilled me to the marrow. A smear of red across the plating. Not rust, not oil. It was inside the Geller field perimeter, and it spelled 3 words, in low Gothic, "We hear you." Navigator Rel performed an emergency ritual to recalibrate her connection to the Astronomicon. She emerged from her chamber, pale and shaking. She claimed she saw the light of the Emperor flicker, not dim, not fade, flicker as if something moved in front of it. She said it had a shape, not a warped beast, she whispered. A man, no, something wearing the shape of one. He was smiling, no face, but still smiling. The navigator has since refused to sleep without 2 guards at her door. The rites fail, the oil burns sour, my voice trembles mid-verse. The bulkhead walls now echo back prayers spoken in private. This is not corruption, this is not possession. This is something older, watching, waiting. Every hour more walk the outer veil, each step brings them closer. I asked Elymas what they want. He laughed. He said, "You already gave it to them, you gave them your faith." Vorlex broke protocol, entered the choir chamber with bolt pistol drawn. He demanded Elymas explain the hull markings, the deaths, the whispers. Elymas only smiled. You listen, and they come. You speak, and they know your name. You pray, and they wake. Vorlex slammed him against the choir stone, demanded truth. Elymas whispered, "He wears your voice when you sleep." The commissar has not returned since that encounter. His quarters are locked. His vox remains silent. There are no signs of entry, no alarms triggered, no hull breaches found. And yet, they walk the outside, barefoot, burned, patient. I asked Magos Drax what he thought they were. He didn't answer. He just said, "We may be inside the ship, but they are already inside us." I keep seeing footprints in my dreams now, leading toward my door. I have not opened it, not yet, but I fear I will. They found blood this morning, a junior astropath. Vela, just 17 standard years, was discovered slumped over her station, face pale, eyes wide. She was dead. No sign of struggle, no sign of weapon, just her eyes, gone, surgically clean, removed with eerie precision. The floor beneath her was soaked in dark, syrupy blood, but no trails, no handprints, just the body, just the silence. When they lifted her, they found a message scratched into the plasteel under her chair, etched with fingernails. "He sees more through us." Magos biologist confirmed it. No trauma, no sedative, no poison. The heart stopped, likely from psychic overload. As for her eyes, removed post-mortem, he said, cleanly, ritualistically. When asked how anyone could enter the sealed chamber undetected, the reply was quiet. There are no access logs, no door breach, no surveillance error. Then came the final blow. The internal sensors show that Vela was alone the entire time. Elymas began whispering again, only when no one was near, only when left in silence. I sat behind the reinforced viewing screen for hours. He murmured to the air, smiling gently, as if speaking to old friends. I recorded every word. "Do you remember the world before stars? Do you remember when time was flat? We wore your minds like skin." At one point, he looked directly into the camera feed and said, "You will forget how to be human before this ends." I almost dropped my data slate. Rumors spread like fire. The crew says the astropaths are dying, that the Emperor's light no longer reaches them. that something else is speaking when the psychers try to listen. Someone painted a message on the wall of the crew mess in dried recaf. We are not alone in the choir. It was wiped clean before the shift change, but I saw it. So did the others. Confessor Maros attempted a sermon to calm the crew. He began strong, quoting the Book of Souls. Through the warp, his light shall pierce. Then he stopped. His eyes went wide. He looked upward, toward the ceiling, toward the air. Then, softly, "Oh, you're here already?" He collapsed, foaming at the mouth. Medicae claimed a stroke. I don't believe them. He hasn't spoken since. Just repeats the same phrase over and over. The choir bleeds when we listen. I helped clean the chamber. Not by order, by instinct. I couldn't explain why. Something about the silence in there unsettled me more than blood, like a scream that hadn't been voiced yet, one we were all trying to avoid hearing, while helping the adepts scrub Vela's blood from the choir pit. I noticed something strange beneath her seat, a sigil burned into the plasteel floor, only visible under certain angles of light, an eye, vertical, twisted, warp script, forbidden tongue. I copied it quickly before anyone else saw. I plan to look it up in the ship's restricted codices tonight, if they haven't been erased. Tonight, Elymas did something new. He stood again, alone, unprompted, no movement from hours prior. He placed both hands on the choir stone, the sacred seat from which psychic signals are sent across the galaxy, and whispered one word: "Open." The lights dimmed, the temperature dropped. Several Auspex systems crashed simultaneously, and behind him, just for a moment, a shape appeared, a shadow with too many arms. It reached out, then vanished. Elymas fell back into his seat and began to hum. The tune was familiar. It was the Sanctis Veil's launch hymn, the one played when we first left port 126 days ago. Vela's death changed everything. Before, we could pretend it was madness. Now it's murder, ritualistic, targeted, and worse. No one knows who's next. Everyone's afraid to sleep, to listen, even to pray, because something is answering, not in words, in presence. And Elymas, he's not mad. He's becoming something else, or someone is becoming him. I awoke to a sound in the corridor, soft tapping, like bare feet on metal. Then a whisper through the vents: "He needs new eyes." I didn't open the door. I just sat in the dark, holding my last pistol, listening and trying not to blink. Elymas was now a threat. The captain said it first. He's killed one of our psychers, maybe more. We can't verify what's coming through him. We don't even know if it's him speaking. Margos Drax remained silent. Navigator Rel avoided eye contact. Confessor Maros hadn't spoken since the seizure. Then Commissar Vorlek stepped forward, armor heavy, voice cold. He is no longer sanctioned. He is no longer imperial. We must execute the Astropath. The room was silent. Then a voice said, "No." It came from behind us. A woman in black stood in the doorway, red rosette glinting on her chest. An inquisitor. She introduced herself as Inquisitor Kellen, Ordo Hereticus. Her orders were sealed, her words, law. "I was dispatched 3 weeks ago," she said, "because the Adeptus Astra Telepathica saw this coming." She stared at us, calm and cruel. "You are not the first crew to hear the whispers. You will not be the last." Elymas was placed under doubled guard. Holy seals were etched across his throne and the walls of the choir chamber. No psychers allowed inside without supervision. No messages sent, no thoughts shared. He hadn't spoken since the day Vela died, but he was smiling more often now, and he hummed, always the same tune, the launch hymn. Even the guards began to shift uncomfortably. One filed for transfer, the other shot himself during mess. Kellen shared her data with the command staff. Me. I still don't know why I was allowed in. Her records were chilling. 7 Imperial ships across 4 sectors had suffered similar events over the last 5 years. All had astropaths who began to speak in dual voices. All experienced vox, ghost phenomena, whispering crew deaths, and warp corruption with no breach. All went silent within 30 days. None were recovered. Kellen turned to us and said, "You still have a chance. But we cannot silence Elymas until we know what is speaking through him." Later, she called me into her private chamber. Candles burned low, cogitator screens were off, just shadows and the smell of incense. "You've seen more than they have," she said. "He says your name. He mirrors your dreams. He's using you." I swallowed hard. Then why not kill him? She lit a stick of blessed bark, its smoke curling around us, because what's inside him may not be trying to destroy us. It might be trying to warn us. She leaned in closer. But the warp doesn't use words like we do. It uses images, pain, memory, and he's using you to translate it. That night, Confessor Maros spoke again. He wandered into the chapel, barefoot, muttering prayers. I followed, watching from the shadows. He lit a candle, stared at it, and said, "I saw the throne, cracked. The Emperor's face was not his own. Elymas is not lost. He is unmoored, floating between messages, like a relay tuned too wide." I asked him what that meant. He turned slowly, eyes full of sorrow. He's becoming a receiver for more than one voice, and some of them may not be enemies. Drax's tech priests found something. Buried deep in Elymas's choir logs was a corrupted transmission, a burst that lasted only a second, over 800 hours ago, before the first symptoms began. They played it through a dampened speaker. It was a man's voice, calm, gentle. "If you hear this, it means we failed. Don't trust the messages. They're layered." Then static. Then a second voice, Elymas's voice, overlaid. "You are the last hope, but you must bleed for truth." Then silence. Drax whispered. He was hijacked. With all evidence gathered, Captain Elbar held a final council. Sanction or salvation. Purge Elymas before the ship descends into madness. Or keep him alive and risk opening a channel to something worse. No one wanted to vote, but the captain forced it. Inquisitor Kellen raised her hand. "We wait." Navigator Rel shaking. "We watch." Commissar Vorlex jaw tight. "We end it." Margos Drax. "We study." Then Elbar turned to me. "You've seen him closest, you've heard the dreams. What do you say?" I stared at the floor, then I whispered, "He's still in there." That night, Elymas stood up in his sealed chamber, facing the reinforced window. I was on the other side, watching, alone. He opened his mouth, no sound, but I read his lips. "Thank you." Then he sat again, eyes closed, as if waiting for the next voice, and the shadows behind him twitched, watching, waiting. I was asleep, and then I wasn't. There was no sound, no motion, just the sudden feeling of being watched, not by someone in the room, but by the walls themselves, like the metal remembered me, like the air waited for my breath. I sat up, my data slate was on. I hadn't touched it. The screen glowed with a message I hadn't written. "Do not dream." When I did fall back asleep, the dream was too clear, sharper than reality. Cold air, dust underfoot. I was standing on the hull of the Sanctis Veil, barefoot, like the footprints we saw days ago. The warp howled above, but everything was silent. Behind me, Dozens of figures stood, crew, officers, children, the dead, all blindfolded, all weeping black tears. Ahead stood Elymas, but he was taller, thinner, his arms too long, his robe billowing in still air. His eyes, usually sealed, were open and glowing white. He spoke, but not with his mouth. "We are the last signal. The stars are gone. They only pretend to shine. Come see the truth." And then I fell, backward, through the hull, through the decks, through the ship's heart, into a void with no light, no end, just a presence. It didn't speak with words. It used memories. Mine. Others. It showed me a galaxy burning, then rebuilding, then burning again. It whispered through feelings. "You've done this before. You've already failed." I woke, gasping. Cold sweat soaked through my undershirt. My bunk was scorched, edges blackened, as if exposed to heat or radiation. A faint trail of ash curled from the corners of my pillow. I wasn't alone. A symbol had been drawn on my chest in blood. A crooked eye with 3 lashes. I scrubbed it off before the medici could see, but I didn't forget it. I found the same symbol in the restricted lexicon of the librarium hours later. It's an ancient mark of the screaming choir. Vanishna Cult from Eminfirm Silver T1. Their doctrine? The truth speaks through dreams. Reality is a lie of silence. Kellen entered the choir chamber alone. I watched through the Auspex feed. Elymas didn't move, didn't blink. She stood before him, rosette exposed, bolt pistol holstered. "Tell me what's coming," she said. "Nothing." She stepped closer, whispered, "Who are you now?" And Elymas replied, the last translator, the voice behind the astronomen. "We never left. We were just quiet." Kellen stepped back. "Then why speak now?" He smiled, lips cracking from dryness. "Because you're finally listening." Navigator Rel filed a private dream report to Drax. It matched mine, almost, exactly. She stood on the hull, saw Elymas glowing, saw the blindfolded dead, except in her version she followed him, took his hand, and woke 3 hours later, standing at her viewing chamber window, eyes open, hands covered in ink. She'd written on the glass in a language she swore she didn't know. The eye never closed. During a system recalibration, Elymas reached forward and touched the choir stone again. The ship lurched. Alarms wailed. Gravity faltered. Lights flickered red. For 6.3 seconds, we were in 2 locations at once, confirmed by navigational cogitators and warp sensors. One here, the other a set of coordinates that don't exist on any star chart. When the ship stabilized, Elymas whispered, "You tasted it. The place before time. You'll return there, you always do." I've stopped trying to explain. The dreams aren't dreams. They're invitations, warnings, messages, proof that the warp doesn't just reflect our fears. It remembers them, uses them. And Elymas, he's not just hearing, he's transmitting now. To who? To me, to you, to whatever's listening on the other side of the veil. Tonight, the ship's master vox system came alive, unprompted. Elymas's voice echoed through every corridor. No authorization, no source signature, just words, soft and certain. The stars lie. The light is memory. We're not lost. We are returning. It began with a tremor. Engine crew felt it first, just a soft vibration through the deck, like a heartbeat in the metal. Then came the distortion. Lights turned purple. Gravity reversed, only for a second, but enough to send 2 workers crashing into the ceiling. One broke his neck. The other screamed about eyes in the walls before biting through his tongue. When they checked the stabilizer feeds, one of the Geller field anchors was gone. Not damaged, gone, cleanly erased from reality. Tech priests buzzed like insects. Emergency rites were chanted. Auspex sweeps ran in loops. Mago's Drax was shaking, a thing I'd never seen. There is no breach, he said. No mechanical failure. No sabotage. The field simply stopped holding. Navigator Rel interrupted. The coordinates have shifted. We were still moving through the warp, but now the stars she used to guide us were flickering, rotating, folding inward like paper. Her face was pale. I no longer recognized the patterns. I don't think this is the warp. 27 crew members reported sudden nosebleeds, migraines, and emotional spikes, all in the same 10-minute window. One engineer began screaming uncontrollably, then vomited black ink before falling into a coma. A message was found smeared on his wall in his own blood. He dreams through us now. Another crewman cut out his own tongue. When restrained, he wrote a single word repeatedly in his own feces. Elymas. I met Kellen outside the sealed choir chamber. Through the reinforced window, we watched Elymas sit unmoving. Around him, the air shimmered. His mouth wasn't moving, but I heard his voice in my head. So did she. We said it aloud at the same time. It's not invasion. It's translation. The secondary Geller field failed for 4.3 seconds. During that time, every lit candle aboard the Sanctis Veil went out. Elymas stood from his throne and walked on air, 6 inches above the floor. No sound, no breath, just motion. A junior guardsman guarding the choir chamber collapsed, eyes ruptured. His skin bubbled like it was rejecting his bones. Elymas stopped, looked up, and said, "The skin of reality is cracking. You will see what we saw." Drax sent a drone inside. Its sensors tried to scan Elymas's mind pattern. The feedback fried the machine instantly, exploded in sparks. The last frame it captured before shutdown was Elymas's face, staring directly into the lens, smiling, but behind his face, a shadow, a different shape, like a second head. The Magos backed away. We are not looking at one soul anymore. He's become an antenna. Later that cycle, Navigator Rel demanded access to Elymas. She said she could feel something in his mind. Something calling her by name. Against Kellen's orders, she entered alone. For 6 minutes, nothing happened. Then she stumbled out, weeping. "He showed me home," she said. "Not Terra, not the Golden Throne. A place before that. Before the stars." When pressed for details, she vomited black liquid and passed out. She hasn't woken up since. At 1700 hours, a full fracture event was declared. Decks 9 to 11 shifted 3 meters to the left. Walls bent inward like soft plastic. Gravity pulsed like a heartbeat. Not mechanical, organic. One Medica Bay reported seeing their entire hallway loop. The same injured crewman wheeled past them 6 times in a row, despite never turning back. Inquisitor Kellen confirmed it grimly. The ship's timeline is unraveling. And then Elymas spoke again, not aloud, not through the choir, through every Vox speaker on the ship, even the locked ones. "We dreamed this place. We shaped it with silence. You were always here. We are the fracture." And then the power surged. I don't know where we are anymore. Time skips. My clock rewinds. I forget words mid-sentence. I see myself standing outside my own door. I no longer know if I'm awake. The ship moans like it's in pain. The hull whispers my name. The lights blink in Morse that matches my heartbeat. We have passed the fracture point. We are no longer just lost in the warp. We are seen. The chamber smelled of incense and old blood. Candles wouldn't stay lit, not anymore. Every flame flickered violently and died within seconds, even the sacred oils. Elymas sat in the center, motionless, his hands folded neatly like a statue. There used to be 9 other psychers, now there were none. The remaining junior astropaths, those not already dead or mad, were gone, removed, transferred. No one would say where. But I knew. The choir had fallen silent. Elymas was the last voice. And maybe not even human anymore. Kellen was quiet. No fire, no lecture. Just silence as we reviewed the final astropathic logs. No outbound transmissions had been successfully made in 4 days. But inbound, still coming. Then who's sending them? I asked. Kellen tapped her fingers against her rosette. The dead. She turned her eyes toward the sealed chamber. Or worse, the ones between. Confessor Maros stood in the broken chapel, speaking to no one, just the statues, the smoke, and whatever hid behind the stained glass windows now smeared black from the inside. The choir is gone, he whispered. The bridge is broken. Faith cannot speak without voices to carry it. He picked up the censer, waved it once, then walked into the fire of the prayer brazier without flinching. His body burned, no screams. The fire turned black. The chapel lights never came back on. Margos Drax disconnected all psychic monitoring systems. Not out of caution, out of fear. Their sensors now reported impossible values, negative pulse rhythms, brainwave patterns repeating the ship's own warp coordinates, moments where Elymas's mind vanished, then returned from different frequencies. Drax issued a restricted protocol. Do not attempt to measure the astropath. You may become measurable. I was walking near the sub-choir service junction when I saw her. Astropath Veil, the girl who died, eyes carved out, body burned. She stood at the end of the corridor, barefoot, arms down at her sides. Her mouth moved, no sound, but the vox in my pocket hissed to life, and I heard her say, "There is only one voice, now. And you gave it yours." Then she vanished, like dust blown away. The hallway was ice cold. Captain Elbar ordered one final attempt. A high-frequency emergency distress signal, purified, encrypted, and burned onto a golden data prayer fragment, sent across every known warp frequency. For 0.73 seconds, the transmission succeeded, then silence. The response came immediately. Signal acknowledged, but you are already within. What is broken cannot be saved. We do not respond to echoes. His skin is grey now, not sick, not rotting, just changing. His mouth doesn't move, but voices still rise from his throat, sometimes 2 or 3 at once. Not always in Gothic, sometimes in High Gothic, sometimes in binary, once in a language that made the observation deck's glass crack. His hands are longer now, his fingers too many. And sometimes, when the lights flicker, he casts no shadow. Deep in the sealed server banks, a final recording surfaced, hidden, encrypted. One of the last junior astropaths, a boy named Aaron, made it days before he vanished. He whispers into the recorder, weeping softly. We tried to block it. We built mental walls, prayed until we bled. But he spoke in our dreams, in our memories. He didn't want the message, he wanted us. And now we are part of the choir. The log ends with screaming, and a second voice. You are not observers, you are instruments. No more astropaths, no more choir, no voice to send, no ear to listen. Only Elymas, only silence. And yet I hear the hum of voices when I close my eyes. They say, We sang you into being. Now, you will echo for us. At 2300 ship time, Elymas stood for the last time that day. He raised his hands, palms bleeding, not from wounds, but from within. As if the blood had forgotten where it belonged, he whispered, "The choir has fallen. Now the song begins." The ship shuddered, no cause, no explosion, just a tremble, like something stretched. Outside, through the viewport, the stars twisted into symbols, runes in a sky with no light, and the silence screamed. The Vox went dark, not damaged, not jammed, just gone. Every signal, every frequency, every emergency channel, even the internal whisper lines, the ones used between command and engineering, were dead, not even static, just cold silence. Tech priests confirmed it wasn't mechanical. "The machines still transmit," Drax said, "but nothing leaves." We tried shouting into the void, but the void had stopped listening. I visited the Vox Tower myself. The consoles still glowed, the hissing crystals still pulsed. But when the Vox officer, hands trembling, tried to send a signal to the auxiliary deck, we heard nothing. Then he changed the channel, and I heard something new, not silence, not a signal, a heartbeat, my own. Played back to me before it beat in my chest. The Vox was receiving me moments before I existed. Elymas no longer sat still. He stood now, constantly staring at the walls of the choir chamber, turning slowly, as if tracking something circling him. One of the guards reported seeing reflections in the glass that didn't match his movements, a hand rising when none had moved. A second head behind his shoulder, eyes that blinked in the wrong direction. When questioned, the guard refused to return. He said he sees something behind the ship, something riding with us. Rel remains unconscious, but now she speaks in her sleep, in bursts of broken code and words. No one understands. Kellen recorded one phrase repeated over and over. "The gate is shaped like a thought. It opens when we die. Only the dead may listen." Her heart rate spikes when Elymas is near, even sedated, even unconscious. She knows he's there. Drax accessed the Sanctis Veil's original launch archives. He went back to the first seconds after departure, the earliest choir transmissions. What he found was missing time. 12 seconds of pure blank between warp entry and first navigational beacon contact. No log, no signal, just null space. He enhanced the waveform, found a single spike buried beneath the silence, a sound wave shaped like a human face. Elymas's. "He didn't change after entry," Drax said. "He changed the moment we left." Kellen demanded we make a decision. "Now, this ship is no longer loyal," she said. "The choir is gone. The navigator is broken. The Vox is dead. And Elymas is speaking in two directions at once." Captain Elbar, gaunt and shaking, refused. "If we kill him now, we might sever our last connection." Kellen's hand hovered over her bolt pistol. "You're thinking like a man who still has hope." "You shouldn't." That night I dreamed again, but this time, not alone. I stood in the warp void, surrounded by echoes of the dead. Vela, Maros, the guardsman who shot himself, Navigator Rel, but her eyes were bleeding starlight. And Elymas, except it wasn't him. It wore his skin, but its limbs were too long, and its face unfolded like pages. It said, "We sing in your voice. We dream in your name, but only the dead may listen." I woke to find blood in my ears and a strange sigil burned into the wall beside my bed. No fire, no tool, just carved into the metal. I traced it and wept without knowing why. 6 crew members failed to report for duty. Their rooms were empty, uniforms still folded, Vox tags still active. No footage of them leaving, no life signs. But at 4 a.m., the ship's auspex registered new biosigns outside the hull, not floating, walking, in silence, barefoot. At 0:05 warship time, Elymas turned to the surveillance camera in the choir chamber. He stared directly into it, and for the first time in days, he spoke aloud. This is not invasion. This is remembrance. You carried us here in pieces in your prayers, in your fear. Now we are whole, and you will listen. Soon. The camera burned out. The walls began to sweat. Actual sweat, as if the ship's skin was alive. I can no longer feel time. Minutes stretch into hours, or collapse into nothing. I looked at a reflection today, and saw myself a week ago, smiling when I shouldn't have. The silence is loud now, like it's holding its breath. And Elymas, he doesn't blink anymore, because maybe he's seen what comes next, and it doesn't need eyes. The auspex sweep came back blank. Then the drone footage loaded. There were dozens now, figures walking across the outer hull, barefoot, bleeding footprints burned into the metal, faces turned skyward, as if looking not at the warp, but through it. No suits, no helmets, and they weren't floating. They were walking, calmly, rhythmically, as if gravity still held them. Among them I recognized one. Vela, eyes gone, skin split. She turned to look at the drone and smiled. The engineering crew tried to raise shields, to activate point defense batteries, to repel whatever was out there. The systems refused. The cogitator repeated the same phrase. Target data invalid. Entities already inside. Drax began weeping oil. Navigator Rel awoke with a scream, but it wasn't her voice. The sound was deeper, like metal being bent backward. She rose from the bed without touching the floor. Her eyes were solid black. She spoke with 3 voices at once. We remember the silence before the stars. You broke it. Now you breathe the silence in. Then her body collapsed, still breathing, still alive. But her mind was gone. Kellen ordered her body sealed in stasis. I could still hear whispering from behind the door an hour later. For 20 seconds, one Vox beacon reactivated. No one triggered it. The sound that came through wasn't a voice. It was breathing, slow, wet, labored, until a final exhale whispered so many mouths, now only ears. Then it cut off. Every light on the command deck dimmed. Kellen assembled a kill team, guardsmen, flamers, blessed rounds, psychic dampeners, target, Elymas. She said nothing as they marched to the choir chamber. I followed, against orders. I needed to see what happened. The doors opened. Elymas stood in the center, arms outstretched. His body was floating, cruciform, 3 feet above the floor. Blood drifted upward from his robes like ink in water. One of the guards raised his weapon. He burst into red vapor before firing. The others screamed, shields raised, but the fire burned backward into them. Kellen stepped forward, rosary in one hand, bolt pistol in the other. Elymas spoke without opening his mouth. Breath is a gift. You gave it to the song. Now the song takes it back. Kellen pulled the trigger. The bolt shell froze in the air, then melted. Then she was gone. Just gone. Like she had never existed. Only her rosette remained, spinning slowly on the floor. Drax sealed the chamber with a full gravity lock and null field barrier. No one's gone near since, but we still hear him. He sings now. A low, humming tone that resonates through the walls. It's in our lungs. Every breath feels heavier, sharper, like we're inhaling someone else's voice. I tried to write today, but the words change after I write them. I looked down and saw symbols instead of sentences. A note to myself, meant to say, quarantine choir room. But instead, it read, he is already here. My memories are warping. I remember conversations I never had, people I never met, whole days that don't exist. I'm losing myself, not from madness, from something rewriting me. One of the medici was seen walking calmly down corridor 17. He wasn't scheduled to be there. Security tried to stop him. He turned to them, smiled, and said, "It's okay. He needs breath." Then he stepped into a maintenance duct and vanished. They opened the duct 5 minutes later. Nothing inside, no air, no body, just the smell of roses. At exactly 6 a.m. ship time, Elymas's voice filled the Sanctis Veil. No communications, no vox, just air. Everyone heard it. The choir was never meant to sing alone. You were made to echo. Now, you will hum his name. Forever. Then the sound faded, except it didn't. It became breath. Every time someone exhales now, it's in rhythm, the same 3-note hum. Every crew member, every floor, breathing the same pattern. I tried holding my breath. I lasted a minute. Then I felt something inside my chest, a pressure like fingers pressing against my ribs. When I exhaled, the breath hummed. I didn't choose the tune. I just breathed. And now, I think, we're no longer passengers on this ship. We're the choir. We've stopped moving. The warp doesn't rush past the windows anymore. No color storms, no streaks of horror light. Just black, endless, still. Captain Elbar stared out the viewport for almost an hour, said nothing, didn't blink. Then he turned to me and whispered, "There was never a ship," and walked away. He hasn't been seen since. The cogitators report no location, not lost in the warp, not out of range, just null, no coordinates, no momentum, no readings at all. Margot's Drax ran a full diagnostic on our physical layout and found deck numbers repeating. Deck 9 leads to Deck 10, Deck 10 leads to Deck 9. Forever, we've entered a loop. Somewhere in the Sanctis Veil, there's a space that doesn't end, and possibly never began. I dreamt of walking the halls, same corridor, same lights, same sound of breath. Every turn led back to the same point, but each time there was one less door, one less crew member, until it was just me and Elymas. He didn't speak, he just opened his mouth, and I heard everything. Voices layered over centuries, children crying, prayers spoken in ancient dialects, choirs singing in impossible tones. Then, you were built to carry us. Your mind is the last bastion. You dreamed the ship, Jonas, but you forgot. A vox burst replayed itself from deep storage, unmarked, unnumbered, no timestamp. It contained only one sentence. The Sanctis Veil was never real. Then the file deleted itself. When Drax tried to recover it, the system laughed. A voice that sounded like Elymas and like me. Elymas floats, arms out, robes trailing like smoke. But now, he doesn't move. He's frozen, mid-gesture, like someone paused him. But from his mouth comes a constant hum, deep, steady, ancient. It's not music, it's a map. Drax's machines translated the frequency. It forms a pattern, a looping star chart that leads nowhere. Coordinates for a place that doesn't exist, a location in the galaxy labeled here before. People are forgetting their names, forgetting who they were, what they were doing, why they even came aboard. One man stood in the galley and asked, "What's a guardsman?" A woman whispered, "I had a brother, or was I the brother?" They don't scream anymore, no panic, just gentle erasure, one breath at a time, like chalk washed by rain. I write these words, but they change on the slate. When I try to reread my logs, they vanish, rearranged into riddles. I'm forgetting details, Names, faces, orders. I remember Elymas, but I no longer remember what his face looked like before. I looked in a mirror today and thought, is that mine? I blinked and the reflection smiled first. At 12 o'clock hours, the Sanctis Veil shook gently, like a ship docking. But we weren't near anything. Then, every Vox channel opened. Elymas's voice filled every corner, but this time it wasn't a warning or a song, it was a revelation. You were built of memory. You carried us from silence into shape. The ship is your dream, and now you awaken. The lights turned off and never came back. I walked to the bridge. It was empty, but something was wrong with the view. The stars were moving backwards, into themselves, collapsing into pinholes of thought. Then I saw my reflection, and it wasn't me. It was a younger version of myself, staring back, eyes wide, face pale, and beside him stood Elymas, smiling, as if it had always been this way, as if this had happened before. There was never a ship. There was a thought, a question, a soul that tried to carry too much voice. And now, I don't know if I'm the dreamer or the dream. The Medicae team tried to perform an autopsy. One of the crew, Ensign Leris, was found dead in the corridor. No wounds, no trauma, just stillness. Peaceful, his face wore a calm expression. But when they opened his chest, they didn't find organs. They found pages. Thin sheets of muscle turned to parchment, each inscribed with writing in blood. One read, "I heard the first word." Another, "He is recording through us." Leris's voice box still worked. It whispered, even while dead. "We are echoes wherein meet." I feel hollow, not tired, not afraid, hollow, like I'm being used to carry a sound too big for a throat. Something wants to resonate through me, through all of us. The walls hum, my bones vibrate. I've started coughing blood, except it isn't mine. It smells like incense and salt. One of the tech priests vanished during routine inspection. When his team went to find him, they discovered something instead. Skin, laid out like a sheet over the Geller coils, perfectly flat, still warm, still twitching. Underneath, carved into the floor, were the words, "We were never born, we were sung." I returned to the choir chamber. Elymas is changing again. He's no longer floating, he's splitting. His body is peeling at the center, not bleeding but unfolding, like cloth cut open. From the wound, a second face pushes outward, not a human one, smooth, featureless, like wax, beginning to melt. It speaks without lips. We had to become human to speak to you. But it hurts. You hurt. I was writing a report when I remembered something strange, a childhood memory of sitting with Elymas in a sunlit garden. But that's impossible. I didn't know him before this ship. That garden never existed, but I can still feel the warmth on my skin. Hear him whisper, "You will forget this too." But I won't. 4 officers collapsed at once on the bridge. No warning, no contact. When Medicae tried to revive them, their bodies arched violently and spoke in perfect unison. "The flesh is the mouth, but you are deaf." So we scream. Their bones cracked from the strain. Then their faces melted into smooth masks. No eyes, no mouth, just skin stretched over echoes. Drax sent one final encrypted burst to Terra, using forbidden tech. His message was brief. The signal isn't corrupted. We are. There's something ancient inside the Astronomicon, something that waits for silence. Elymas wasn't infected. He was chosen. Then his signal cut. His body was found in the tech priest shrine, his metal limbs torn off and raised. Refan. Lacia like. Antennae seats, I stood at the ship's viewing deck. Where stars should be, I saw faces, vast, broken, echoing faces, twisting through the warp like cloth in wind. They smiled when I looked. One of them looked like my mother. One like the captain. One looked like me. Then they faded into mist, voices still murmuring. The metal wall began to pulse as if trying to breathe. The glass in the choir chamber went black. Then a single, glowing eye appeared in the center, and a voice, Elymas's but deeper, spoke directly to me. The song cannot end. You are the bridge now. One last breath, then the echo becomes real. You must remember who you were. And then, forget. I don't know my name anymore. They call me Jonas, but it feels like a borrowed coat. My memories drip like melted wax. My skin hums when I close my eyes. And Elymas waits, always watching, always singing. We were never meant to listen this long. Now we don't hear, we become. Ship time. Unknown. Deck count. Unknown. Crew accounted for. 3 sanity status. Irrelevant. My name was Jonas, I think. I'm writing this from a place that may no longer exist. The Sanctis Veil is quiet now, too quiet. There's no breath, no machinery hum, no flickering lights, only the sound of skin shifting somewhere in the walls, and the hum, that cursed, perfect hum, that comes with every exhale. No one's died in hours because there's no one left to die. I went back to the choir chamber. The seals were gone. The door hung open. Inside, Elymas floated upside down, spinning slowly in the dead air. His robes were gone, his form twisted, not burned, not mutated, just rearranged. His body had become a scroll. His skin stretched wide across the floor, marked with glowing runes in languages I've never seen. And in the center, a mouth. Not his, something else. Wet, twitching, ringed with teeth that never closed. When I stepped into the room, it spoke through every pore of my body, not into my ears, into my bones. The choir was always you. You built us from screams. Now you sing. Suddenly, I remembered something I had never lived. The day we launched. Only we didn't. There was no launch, no Emperor's light. Just a moment, frozen, where something spoke first. A voice from beyond the Astronomicon, something older than the Imperium, older than thought. It found Elymas first. He opened the way, but it couldn't come through without help. It needed an echo, a vessel, a witness. It needed me. Decks no longer made sense. Corridors now pulse. Doors bleed when opened. Lights flicker in rhythmic hymns. I walk to the engine core, or what used to be the engine. Now it's a cathedral of living walls. Veins pulse across support beams. Bones jut from consoles. The ship has become a throat. It's trying to sing itself into existence. And I'm the last note it needs. At the center of the core, Elymas stood, or what's left of him. He's tall now, 12 feet at least, eyes gone, replaced by holes of burning white. His arms are long, jointed wrong, like wings not made for flying. His chest cavity opens like a curtain, revealing a pulsating organ that sings in whispers. The last choir. He doesn't speak, he just looks at me, and in my mind I hear, this is the voice behind the Imperium. You thought the Emperor was alone. You thought the warp was chaos. It was always song. And now you're part of it. A console remained. Pristine, ancient, not from this ship. It had one key, one option. Scuttle ship, confirm, YN. I could do it. Burn the Sanctis Veil, end this, deny the final note. But as I reached out, the choir sang through me, my lungs filled with their hum, my fingers shook, and Elymas whispered behind me, if you silence us, there will only be screaming. But if you sing, We will make a new truth. I stood frozen. The console pulsed. Y or N. I didn't press anything. The Sanctis Veil decided for me. The lights died. The walls folded inward. The void outside opened, not as space, but as a mouth, a maw of concepts, memory, regret. And then came the scream, not mine, yours, every voice that ever touched the warp, every thought that ever believed in silence, all pouring through the choir's last breath. The following was found by a salvage crew from the Vigilant Emperor 3 years after the Sanctis Veil was lost. A single vox burst, low fidelity, Jonas's voice barely audible. We became the song. He was never mad, we just never listened. But now, you will. Then silence, then the same 3-note hum heard aboard the lost ship, now echoing across dozens of astropathic sanctums, and growing louder. Somewhere outside of time, Elymas stands. Around him, thousands of shapes hum in unison. Somewhere flesh, somewhere memory, somewhere your face. They are the echoed, the remembered, the dead who sing. And the tune continues, across ships, across sectors, one breath at a time. Because the voice never needed an empire, it needed an audience. If you're hearing this, you've already heard the song. The hum in your walls, the voice in your sleep, the rhythm of your breath. It's not Elymas anymore, it's you. It always was. Do you hear it now? If this story whispered to something inside you, then you're already part of the choir. Subscribe to Hollow Vox for more terrifying Imperial transmissions, warp-tainted horrors, and cursed stories the Inquisition doesn't want you to hear. One breath, one voice, one truth. Like, share, and remember, the next voice you hear might be your own.